Okay, hi, this is Brian, and I'm going to advance this. We know quite a bit about PASA, but some of you probably don't know much. We've been around since 1992. We're a membership-based nonprofit, which, by the way, is a term that I use very carefully because most nonprofits that think that they're membership-based organizations really are not. But we are a true membership-based program, meaning that our members have, and that would include, for instance, electing members of the board, which most nonprofits don't have their members elect board members. They have their board members elect board members. Our particular services go well beyond our original programs, which were to provide educational programs for farmers. Our farm-based education program was, when PASA was young, was certainly a very innovative program that held seminars and workshops right on farms, and we allowed farmers to be the teachers, which is almost kind of the typical way that this kind of education is done these days. But back then it was a big innovation to farmers who were used to hearing extension agents talk about the latest science and how that could be applied on the farm, the best available science, and finding what works and what doesn't. Increasingly, we're fulfilling not only a statewide mission, but more and more regional. Many of our members are in surrounding states. So in some ways, we're a mid-Atlantic organization now, and have even thought about starting chapters in surrounding states because we have so many members in New York, Ohio, West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey, and Delaware. We have good, solid bases of members in each of those states. We also have expanded beyond individual members to include businesses. We have quite a few businesses that are members. So in that sense, we're actually members and not individuals. But I hope you'll be convinced by the end of the call to think that, you know, if you don't already, that you should be reaching out to individuals as well as to markets as members of your organizations, if for no other reason, to get them involved in fundraising activities and other means of supporting your mission, like policy work. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. That's a background about our organization, and Michelle's going to talk a little bit about
17 years of PASA's membership history into these couple of slides in a few minutes. But these are just some points I'm going to try and cover. And I'm actually going to advance this so you can see. I'll mention as well, these are just selected portions of a PDF file that you can actually
download. Project public spaces. If you know your party's extension, you may dial it at any time. For a personnel directory, please dial 1. To speak with someone about projects or project development, please dial 2. For financial questions in the business office, please dial 4. Talk to someone about educational resources, training, or speaking engagements, please dial 5. For media, please dial 6. For information on membership or order products or materials, please dial 7. To speak to a staff person, please dial 0. To hear these options again, please dial 8.
So I'm not sure what's happened there, but
please hold a moment.
I'm just trying to mention that the next couple of slides that we're going to be looking at are just selected portions of PASA's membership brochure, which is actually available on the PDF under the File Share menu. It's called Membership PDF. So actually, if we can advance to the next one, please, and then come back.
There you go.
Thank you. Just to show everyone right now our current membership structure in terms of levels. This is kind of the second evolution of PASA's membership structure. The first one actually included individual and family farm memberships all on one level, and they were broken out a few years ago. Currently, PASA has about over 5,000 individual members and about 3,300 households. We actually collect data on both of those numbers seeing as our family farm levels of membership and nonprofit and businesses can actually have multiple people receiving membership benefits within our program. And I also wanted to point out that we do offer lifetime memberships to individuals and families. And just over the last 2 years, seeing the interest, Brian had pointed out that we do have a fair amount of businesses and nonprofits that want to join in with our organization and be a part of it. And that's a mix of not only agricultural businesses, but restaurants, interested in promoting and selling local food, small businesses and things like that. A lot of those folks are actually interested in a longer-term commitment to PASA as well. So we created this permanent business partnership category. And both of the monies that are gained from this level of membership go into restricted funding accounts. So when that lifetime member or that business actually goes out of business or is deceased, that money is actually released into the organization to be spent at that time. And just as another outline here, that we do offer people to buy gift memberships for other people. Mainly we see this around holiday times, or people call in and actually get a membership for folks for their birthdays and other events and things like that. So the current structure of our membership, as Brian mentioned, we do have about a third of our membership is not actually in Pennsylvania, it's out-of-state membership. And this percentage of who our people are wavers a little bit from 50-50 to 60-40, 70-30. But generally about half of our membership are actually producing foods. They're actually farming anywhere from a quarter to a half acre to up to a couple thousand acres. The other half are just consumers, people interested in supporting the sustainable agriculture movement, researchers, educators, and that kind of thing, just so you can understand a little bit more about our demographics. Go back. Can we go back to the slide listing the benefits of membership, please? Thank you. So this I just want to outline a little bit in terms of our recruitment efforts. A lot of these benefits are what actually bring people into the organization. A big part of that happens with our events. Brian mentioned our conference and our field day programs. And the way that those things are structured, the fee structure is actually beneficial for folks to buy a membership within our organization in order to attend those events. So a lot of our recruitment efforts center around that. Some of the other things here, just to point out, we recently started a new program that's actually separate from the traditional PASA membership called the Good Food Neighborhood. And all current PASA members were for the program as well. And that fits in with our Buy Fresh, Buy Local campaign that we are coordinating here in Pennsylvania. For people who don't know, Buy Fresh, Buy Local is actually a national campaign started by the Food Roots Network, and PASA actually coordinates the chapter efforts here in Pennsylvania. And some of those local chapters actually offer PASA members discounts to be part of that effort as well. And the Good Food Neighborhood is consumer-based membership that's mainly in online format, centered a lot around the social networking aspects of things out there right now. So all of our current members actually get those benefits as well without having to buy a separate membership. And something new that we're actually just started offering as well is sustainable farm certification for farms and processors and things like that. So this is just outlining the benefits that we offer within our membership. It continues to grow because we have such a diverse audience of people to reach out to. We're always continually thinking of how to, best tailor these things to those individuals and make sure all of our members are happy and, staying within the organization. That then flows into some of our retention efforts that currently all of our memberships run on a calendar year. And so each year we do, you know, the annual effort of trying to get those folks to renew, which starts for us in the fall each year. Basically, right now, we just finished up our 2009 membership campaign, and our attrition rate was around 23%, which is kind of on average with other nonprofits out there. And so just in terms of some other service examples that we've been doing recently, PASA does have at least 2 regional offices right now in Pennsylvania. We have elected to divide Pennsylvania into different regions because we are so different geographically in different parts of the state. So currently we have a regional office in Pittsburgh and down outside of Philadelphia. And those regional offices really help us do a lot of things more locally on that basis in terms of helping people market their products, starting farmers markets, starting other business opportunities between farmers and restaurants, so we can gain more access and community building there. A lot of people end up joining our organization mainly for the networking and community building efforts that happen within the organization through various events that they go to and people that they meet. And within those regional offices as well, we're actually starting to explore some fee-for-service types of ideas as well to actually begin generating some other revenue beyond just traditional membership fees. And Brian will actually get into that a little bit more later with different things that we're doing with our annual fundraising campaign and things like that. But in terms of services, there are sort of things in the works that beyond these traditional benefits of our membership that specialize things like helping specifically with business planning or actual helping folks start an on-farm setup in terms of rotational grazing, things like that, that in the future we might be offering those services for a certain type of fee as well. So we'll be talking more about alternative revenues as well.
Okay. Can we go back to the smaller screen then? Right. One more. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about revenue sources, and you're going to hear a lot about that in this session, including from Jeff later on. But you know, we realized long ago that if we were going to continue to grow the way we were, and provide more services to our members, that we were going to have to expand our membership, our revenue sources well beyond just membership dues. In fact, like most nonprofits, we started out with grants, and that was an important aspect of what we do, and or what we did at the beginning. And the revenue picture looks like for your organization. So if you see that little box, if you can fill that out and give us an idea of where your revenues come from, it will give everybody a chance to see, you know, what the profile of the listeners on this call, how they manage the revenues. But I wanted to say that, you know, once an organization is ready to go beyond existing on grants, there's really 2 other basic levels of revenue that are very important and give any organization much more flexibility to be able to pursue its mission. And the second one after grants, I would say, is an annual fund, which involves direct fundraising, special events. It can be sponsorships for those special events as well. And then the third level of revenue that we have decided to pursue, and that I would recommend to any organization, is to look at the fee-for-service option. Now, a lot of times these days, organizations start out with the idea that they're going to do fee-for-service. Actually, that became a later addition. They started with grants, moved into an annual fund, and conventional fundraising is the second most important source of funds, and then they moved into fee-for-service programs later. I'm not saying can't happen in the other direction, but just that's the direction that usually it happens. So I'm seeing some results there. Membership fees are obviously big, and grants are big, so nothing too surprising there. But we'll look a little bit later at our annual fund and how that's structured to give you an idea of how your organizations, even the organizations that are participating on this call. So let me go ahead and advance. And this is, so if we can expand this to full screen. Can we expand this slide to full screen, please?
Working on it, sorry.
Okay. This is, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, this one's worth about 2,000, because it shows you right off the bat just how complex our annual fund is. But you can look at the bottom and see that it also is very effective. So while PASA was sort of limited, first of all, to grant funds, but secondly to membership revenues, which run now about $100,000 a year. Once we got into developing an annual fund of mostly individual donations, we were able to add to that substantially. This is now more than double what we're able to draw from our membership fees. For the purposes of our planning, we divide our fundraising efforts into these categories that you see. There's contributions, which are mostly individual, but you can see that there's a few major gifts from businesses there. We do get some general operating grants, and we just blocked out the names so that we can maintain confidentiality for them there. But general operating grants are wonderful, but it is unrestricted money, and so we count it here. Then we have a series of harvest dinners. We do one in each, well, at least in 3 of our 4 major regions based on where we have offices. So we have a Western dinner reflected there, and a Southeast, and then our Harrisburg is really for our main office. It's really the one that we put most of our effort into. And you can see that those numbers are have grown to be fairly substantial. Those are profit. Those are not gross numbers. And we're very disciplined about only counting, and it says they're net, because we don't want to count as part of our annual fund a gross number and mislead ourselves that we're doing well if, in fact, we're losing a lot of that money due to the expense of these particular events. If you talk to professional fundraisers, they'll tell you that you'll go through an event phase, and that's where you kind of stretch yourself beyond individual donations, and you start having these events where you get many individuals together and you find new donors that way, but that you soon find out that actually the cost of those, particularly in staff time, can be overwhelming, and it doesn't return as much as what your staff time can return if you're approaching more and more individuals that you're able to research and find another way. But we're still very much in our special event phase, and I don't think we'll ever leave it, because as it happens, and as is the case with all of you, food is our mission. And so it just makes sense that as part of our educational mission that we do these food events as well as our desire to raise funds. So I don't think we're going to be passing up our event phase very quickly, if ever. And then we do have some other special projects. They vary year to year depending on sometimes the partners that we have and new ideas that come along. Some pretty innovative things. You can see there we did a little beer, cheese, and chocolate event, which I'm sure for $721 was more fun than fund raising. But we're okay with the fundraising idea too. We did an event this year that featured vodka made from Pennsylvania-grown potatoes. And we called that a fundraiser. And I'm saying F-U-N without the D, because we weren't necessarily doing that in order to make a substantial amount of money, but it was a way of drawing in some people that we would not normally have interacted with. In this case, they were business leaders in the Pittsburgh area. So as you can see, we set goals, and I can tell you that if you're not setting goals, you will not achieve what you wish to achieve. We have been very consistent in meeting our goals. I think there's only one time that we did not, and that was just this past year, which we didn't fall far short, but we also didn't push hard at the end just because of the way the economy was going and all the concern for that. But we still did quite well, and hope to do better this year. So those goals are important. It's important that your board of directors be involved extensively in this process, that they all participate in activities that you plan, and they all give to the annual fund as a way of at least clearing their conscience when they ask other people to give. So those are all important features, and I'd be glad to answer questions later more about the annual fund if you want. So if we could go back to the small screen, or can I advance it from here? Okay, Michele? Oh, no, this is still me. Okay, so when you're looking at finances for an organization, it's quite important that you do good reporting. And so this would be very true no matter what kind of a nonprofit we're talking about. And we're all familiar with the need to report to funders. We need to do a report for sometimes for an audit, and sometimes for other people that want to see that report. But I've always been of the philosophy that the most important aspect of a financial report is internally, so that everybody in the organization can understand very clearly where money's coming from and how it's being money. And I've already talked about the importance of the board of directors in managing an annual fund. They're absolutely critical. I've seen way too many fundraising appeals signed by executive directors. And whenever you see a fundraising appeal that's signed by an executive director, you usually, and this is not the case all the time, but you usually know that the board of directors is not enough involved in order for that to succeed. It really, those letters, whenever possible, should be signed by people who are benefiting from your services, and those are usually the kinds of folks that are on your board. And then it's important to do a periodic review, like an annual evaluation. We do evaluation very differently than you might find in a textbook. We do an annual retreat, and we really encourage, we recheck our mission and our vision and make sure that we're heading in the right direction. These are very important sort of background activities that it's easy to dismiss and easy to find that you don't have enough time to do them, but if you do dismiss them, they have a long-term effect on the organization. So if we can expand this one to full screen, I'm going to show you a little bit about the balance sheet. Now, you can get a more complete financial report you can download from the site here, but I'm just going to show you the balance sheet because I think this is often the most overlooked document in a financial report. We are naturally concerned about whether there's profit and loss in a profit and loss statement, and of course smaller nonprofits are always concerned about cash flow, so the cash flow report is often paid attention to, but the balance sheet sometimes kind of gets set aside. And I think it's a very important document, and I just wanted to cover it a little bit here. Some of you, I'm sure, are already familiar. So we split it in two. So there'll be 2 pages for assets and then liabilities. But assets, I think, are pretty well understood. They're divided into current assets, which are cash, and things that are like cash. And in any organization, accounts receivable are even considered to be like cash because they're going to be collected and will be money in the bank account very soon. Property and equipment, net of depreciation. You can see that our number went up very dramatically, almost doubled between 2007 and 2008, and that's going to go up again in 2009 because we've reached the point where we're starting to invest in more capital items or property and equipment. And then we have this dog of an investment fund here that we lost a lot of money on in the stock market downturn, but it's actually a very small piece of the whole picture. In fact, we don't feel that we're exactly strong enough yet to be investing beyond this one simple social equity mutual fund that was important to one of our board members, and we probably should just get rid of that thing. This is then the bottom of the balance sheet. And if you know how they work, the total at the bottom here has to match the total at the bottom of the assets. But in this case, you have your liabilities added to your net assets. And net assets are what, in a for-profit context, is known as owner's equity. So I want to just go right by the liabilities there, although I'm glad to answer any questions about them, and to the net assets. Because if you don't show your in a balance sheet, if you don't show your net assets in this respect, then you're not really up with the current accounting standards. You and your staff and your board members should have an understanding of the distinction within your net assets of what is unrestricted, what is temporarily restricted, and what is permanently restricted. Permanently restricted is otherwise known as endowment. And it usually would not show up on a report if there's nothing there, but I insist that our report show a zero so that we always remind ourselves that we do not yet have any endowment. The temporarily restricted numbers there are grant funding. Now that's the amount of money that we are holding right now, that's not reflective of our annual expense spending. We're actually well over 50% of unrestricted revenue for our annual income report. That unrestricted number is something that you want to watch very carefully, and that your board should have a goal of setting a goal for how much you should have in that account, and it's often expressed as a percentage of your annual operating budget. So our annual operating budget is a little under $2 million. So you can see that our $127,000 there in unrestricted monies is probably not quite it's not quite a month's worth of operating expense. So I could look at that and say, oh great, we have well over $100,000 in unrestricted money that we're holding. Or you can look at it and say, oh my gosh, we'd be completely out in less than a month if our other sources of funding dried up. So it's something that you separate out this way so that you can understand it, and so that your board of directors can understand it and set some goals for how high they want that to be. We would love for that to be 3 months of operating expense, and you can see that we have a ways to go to achieve that. So that's our portion of this program, and be glad to answer a few questions before we move on to Jeff.
I'll just chime in for a second. I see that Glenda had written in a question. I apologize if I said retention rate. That was actually attrition rate. So we actually lost 23% of the households that we started with during our renewal campaign, not the retention rate. It was attrition.
And so that's pretty standard. It may be a little higher than we'd like to see it. The fact is that we get so many members. I don't know how many of you have been to our conference, but our annual conference has about 2,000 participants. And we've been able to hang on, well, you can see almost 80% of them do. And they participate in other activities that we have. But nonetheless, since so many people do join because they're coming to the conference and because it really is a no-brainer decision at that point, our attrition rate's a little higher than we'd like because they just came to the conference and they're not particularly interested in services otherwise. We've had as many as 40 states and 8 countries represented in our conference. And so, as you can see, if people are coming from states all across the country, it's likely that many of them would not be interested in continuing their membership unless they were coming back to the conference. Are there other questions? And I guess this is a point where you could unmute your line if you wanted to ask a question, or we could just move on to Jeff.
I have a question, Brian. This is Stacy. I noticed on your annual fund spreadsheet that you had projected goals in some areas that were lower than last year's and others that were higher, and I thought maybe you could speak to the economy or other factors.
You mean the goal is actually below our actual from the previous year?
Yes, sorry.
There are a variety of reasons why that might happen, but the more general answer I want to give you is that the reason to do this kind of reporting is to be completely frank and honest with yourself and with your own staff and board about what you're going to be able to do. If in fact conditions are not right because of lack of sponsorship, because of changes in the economy, or what is more likely the case, changes in where your staff is, may involve money that's moving from one category to another. So, for instance, individuals, let's see if that's an example. Maybe it's not. Individuals are up, and major gifts business. So you could almost say that the individual gifts, that increase is relatively small because you would expect this to continue to grow pretty quickly, but we actually are looking at the category of people who have given between the lines that affect that. But we don't always hit our individual goals, and the more honest and frank you can be at the beginning with the plan, the more likely that you're going to meet your overall goal, which is really the more important thing.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's no more questions, then I guess I'll start. Good afternoon, everyone. I thought I was struck of how similar PASA is to Mass Farmers Markets, with the exception of we operate at about a quarter of their annual budget, and I think there's a number of reasons why that's the case, and I thought I could explain that a little bit. And for those of you who like to read while you're hearing someone speak, if there is a notes document that we're founded in 1978, as you can see, and we were funded out of state departments, essentially, and that has influenced our life since then. The main function when we started was to do things and to seek funding that the Department of Ag and the university felt they could not do or could no longer do based upon budget cuts that were beginning even back then for us. We didn't start off as a membership-based nonprofit, and there may be a simple reason for that. For those of you who are familiar with New Hampshire, you may know that the state motto in New Hampshire is "Live Free or Die," and that is a very Yankee. There's more value than cost, and that's not necessarily always good for developing those unrestricted funds that Brian had talked about a little bit before. When the organization started, the stated mission was to enhance farm viability by providing farmers markets for farmers to sell at, and that was the very simple mission of the organization. It was based in the university and Department of Ag's push to use retailing as a tool for farm viability versus wholesaling. So as a result of those conditions, there was a lot of attention paid to communities, and the organization served communities as a tool for setting up farmers markets. And there was significant lack of capacity for the organization to pay attention to the farmers who attended the farmers markets. Though at that time the Extension and Department of Ag still had very adequate resources to serve the agricultural interests, and so we worked as a team. We still continue to work as a team, as a matter of fact, though in different ways. We did have a lot of support back then. All that kind of stuff came to us as part of a collaborative venture with these groups. But the state resources were squeezed significantly beginning in the mid-'80s, and as a result, the farmers who were participating in the system began to take on more and more of the workload and pay more in fees and particularly fee-for-service type of arrangements, took on more roles of the board, and they altered the funding concepts and streams for this organization at that time. And we are now in a process of recouping from some of those decisions that farmers made, as well as moving. However, I will note that it was really a critical element of survivability for this organization to get the farmer input at the time that it did, and to maintain farmer input at the board level, throughout our mission expansion, so to speak. So the mission did expand, and the expansion leads to our current mission, which is to partner with farmers, consumers, and communities to help foster, enhance, and sustain farmers markets in Massachusetts in order to improve regional farm viability, consumer nutrition, and community support of agriculture, i.e. everything but the kitchen sink, and in some cases it is the kitchen sink. In the 1980s, we had a very significant change here in the Northeast that included the work that we did to increase the number of farmers markets, and we went from somewhere in the vicinity of 13 farmers markets in the early 1980s to around 45 or 50 in the mid-1980s. Most of that work, having the Yankee ingenuity ethic, sought more and more services, more detailed services, but it came with the "what can you do for me" syndrome more than anything else, which of course can be problematic. So during this expansion, with the increase of more membership services or demand for more membership services, we had a significant reorganization where farmers stepped in, again, as I mentioned before. Not only that, we also had a significant burnout of market managers, and that led to a very amount of demand for services that were far in excess of what we had done in the past, and it led to our current funding streams, and we'll talk a little bit about those now. Market management is a fee-for-service funding stream that we utilize, and my understanding is we're for you, and I don't think we're going to spend too much time at this particular slide on that, but we will revisit it. What I do want to say is I want to give you some background information that will set the stage for later discussion. And our market management model is predicated on the assumption that a central office will develop systems efficiencies and economies of scale. This system for us currently involves, brings in about 35% of our total revenues, but it requires a minimum of 40% of total staff time. And I think I'm using these numbers to showcase to you folks that although we may think we have developed some efficiencies, at some level we are spending more time. That we were wrong about guessing is that each market tends to be unique, and the perceived economies of scales fall away because of that. The individual situations that have to be dealt with on a market and management level tend not to be able to be something that can group together and all accomplished at one time with one set of parameters or one staff person, so on. Not only that, coming into a community as a professional outsider made it significantly harder for us to generate community support for our managed markets. And as a result, we don't enjoy the level of volunteerism that many other markets enjoy, not only in the state and across the country. And finance distress. And many times we spent countless hours and dollars of resource in bringing those markets, turning them back to a place where they were thriving, turning them around essentially. And at that point, we would say, now it's time for this market, you folks who participate in this market, to put back into the pool financially and support the next market that is under duress. So please, here's your fee structure now that you can afford to pay for it. And more often than not, like 90% of the time, the markets would walk away from that level of financial support. So those are some basic issues that we have with our market management system, and just background information for future discussion in the next couple of slides. Government contracts. One of the main government contracts that we have is the Farmers Market Coupon Program. We are the banking system for the state for our coupon program. We fell into this because we partnered with the Department of Ag many, many years ago to pilot the first Farmers Market Coupon program in the country. And that was done with private grant funds. They needed a charitable organization to run the system, which we agreed to do. The farmers also were very skeptical about taking pieces of paper that weren't actual dollars with the promise that when they mailed them in, they would receive actual dollars for them. And so we tried to use our status in the industry, or we did use our status in the industry, as the stamp of approval that folks would get paid versus leaving it up to a state government, which may or may not have fiscal crises issues at any point in time and may or may not have funds to pay. Based upon the success of that program and our banking system is out there for the coupon programs in other states, we still do it because lower than the average fee per check. And so we're allowed to retain it. We do have other grant contracts as appropriate. It could be a farmer training or a manager training or other educational venues. This, in Massachusetts, is based upon the demise of the extension service, or the lack of funding. To give you some background on that, in the 80s, the funding of the extension was well over $10 million a year. We are now at somewhere around $1 million a year of state funding for our extension service. So we've tried to step in, and by events, we do anything from doing dinners, as Brian talked about, to peddling food at county or statewide regional fairs. We work with some of our member farmers and buy food at wholesale and sell it at retail and keep the profit. And these next levels of income that I'm talking about, events, charitable donations, are things that we consider unrestricted income. And so we have a poll. I have a poll that I'd like to ask you folks, and which is coming up, I believe. If I drag it over here, folks have unrestricted funds. And by unrestricted funds, what I would like you to consider is, if you receive money for which you feel there are no specific limits on how you can spend it, we would consider that unrestricted funds. I don't want to deal with the necessary technical legal definition, but your personal understanding of money comes in, it either has a stated purpose or it doesn't. And if you would answer in that regard, that would be great. And as we're getting the answers, I will move on from events to charitable donations. Charitable donations are actually based in our community outreach. It's principally based in our board members who are not farmers, and they are almost always coupled with the events that we do. And we, beyond having our annual appeal, we have a spring appeal, and we are now moving to a third level, which is an interim summer appeal. I hope we don't go. It allows us to choose the greatest need and put those resources towards it without having to worry about accounting protocols, practices related to justifying those expenses to funding sources. I don't mean to say we get to walk away from our Sarbanes-Oxley Act, because we don't, but we do certainly have a lot more latitude, even if it's to say, you know, we're going to put money into the staff payroll from these funds to pursue certain activities. One of our significant outreach programs, what we consider an outreach program, is our insurance program. Our insurance program, I'm afraid to say, really is the upshot of the American, what I call and others have called the American culture of fear. We, in the mid-'80s, as the farmers market expansion was starting here at that point here in Massachusetts, received a lot of calls from members and non-members alike saying that municipalities and other landowners were requiring these markets to have insurance, and yet there were no insurance policies available for farmers markets. Farmers markets were unknown entities to insurance writers. So using our association and nonprofit status and the resources that we had from membership and so on, we literally went to Lloyd's of London and generated that first policy. And we retained that policy for a couple of years for Lloyd's of London, and then once there was some experience and insurance rating, in fact, upon our first claim, which was minor, Lloyd said, "We're done with you, we're washing our hands, thank you very much," but we were able to find a local insurance agent to work very strenuously to find a United States insurance company to write a farmers market policy, which we maintained and did in fact switch to farm family at this point, which is more farmer friendly than most insurance companies, and not every state of course has that option, but we've maintained a policy with them for close to 20 years. The way the system works is we own the policy, but our agreement with the insurer is that we get to add an unlimited number of additional insureds to the policy. The additional insureds are not only listed by name, but they are listed by location and date and time of operation. This restricts the liability on both our part and the insurance carrier's part for making payments, and as a result, the fees stay relatively low, and this allows us to sell market insurance to non-members and members alike for around $400 a year. If you were to go out in the open market and find insurance in the Northeast, it's typically around $1,600 a year for insurance of a similar value. When I say similar value, we provide for a $1 million single incident, $2 million aggregate with a $5 million umbrella policy. So our total coverage for the system is $7 million per year. And that created a pretty significant value for the industry as a whole, both member and non-member. Grants I'm going to talk about later. Membership, I've already given you a little basic on membership, but membership for us is not a significant portion of income. It never has been. We don't perceive that it necessarily will be, except that as we expand our membership base to non-industry supporters, i.e. the general public, we do see some potential there to generate income that is less restricted. Most of our membership support, unfortunately, we view as a restricted income. We have certain services we have said we will be obligated to provide, and as I mentioned before, typically those services cost at least, if not more, than the membership fee. And the last thing I want to talk about is business support, and we view this as sponsorship. And what I mean by marketing is that we in this industry, I believe the whole industry has experienced a very significant boost based on the public perception of local agriculture and what it can do for us and so on. And of course, we do agree with all of that. As a result, we've had a number of primarily marketing businesses, marketing corporations come to us and say, we want to use your farmers markets as a voice piece. And we say, sure, you can do that. However, we have certain terms and conditions, and one of it is we treat it very much like public television and radio. We seek a sponsorship relationship, and there's very high standards that the sorry about that. We have very high standards that are set by the board before we will accept a sponsorship, and as a result, we're very challenged, and I will speak a little bit more about that, but it is now less than 1% of our revenues. Creating value propositions based upon all of these income streams is very, very challenging, or has been very challenging for us, and as I said, I would talk about our market management system at more in depth, and this is where I'm going to do that. The increase of markets in the 80s and the eventual failures of markets in the later 80s here, based upon volunteer burnout, led to a value proposition almost being forced on us, and that value proposition was to give the industry what they wanted, which was save my farmers market and do it at a fair fee-for-service while trying to, as I mentioned before, compete on an efficiency basis. And it hasn't worked out that way, as I said. What we find is that our ability to generate unrestricted revenues in this particular environment just barely covers the costs and corporate overhead of running the program, if it does at all. And as I mentioned before, the statistics show that it really doesn't quite cover it all. So that makes it more challenging for us in terms of the financial picture. I have a poll that I'm going to ask, which we've asked in one sense before, but one of the other things that we do use or try to create value propositions out of is grants, and I have a lot of opinion on grants, I guess is the best way to put it, and we'd like you to answer this poll as to whether you folks out there use grants a lot, a little, or not at all. And it looks like the vast majority of responses use grants a little, and I think that is pretty much a fair statement of where we're at. We use grants a little, and here's why we use grants a little. Grants can be, and sometimes for us have been, a nightmare of the tail wagging the dog. And our experience has been that many grants are designed not to be a direct value proposition to the recipient organization. But this is not to say that with great care and great attention they cannot be helpful to an organization. But I really feel I have to emphasize the great care and great attention aspect of that statement. Good grants that move an organization forward, and in my perspective, often carry with them much relationship building, which is time consuming, and much attention to detail and other aspects of the grant, which is also time consuming. In the end, grants are very time intensive, but I guess that's the point. The grantors are trading their cash for the time that the organization will put in to move under those missions are closely aligned, and where it doesn't work well at all, of course, is where they're not closely aligned. To that end, one grant that we recently have is from FMPP, and it has made a significant difference to our website. And Chasey, if I bring the link up, is that going to our website? Is that going to come up now?
Yeah, let's try that. We can try that. Just a second.
I just clicked on it and it's not working.
Let's go to...
Here's our website. You can see we do have some sponsorship packages that run on the side there. The look and feel of the website is designed for 4 primary venues with different needs and different information. You see the shoppers, farmers and vendors, host communities, market managers. One of the key ingredients for us and key funding elements of the FMPB grant was a very robust search. And so we can search for under all 4 categories. So I can put the partial name of a market. I can put the time. I'm picking a market, obviously. And likewise, we can clear this. And if you live in a particular area and you want to know where it is, so I'm going to pick our Waltham. And it's all, we search on a 3 zip code digit, so there is a little bit more of a regional basis for it. And you can see the response of all the markets that that exist in that time. Beyond that, picking any particular market.
Steph, I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't believe that all the participants can see the search that you're performing.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Sorry.
If you actually go back to the main screen and go to share your desktop.
I'm going to move on. It's not that critical. The point that I'm trying to make, it would have been nice for you to see it, the picture being worth 1,000 words, is that we have some very robust search features in our website that is geared towards providing as much information to the consumer as we can, so that they will shop more at farmers markets. And we didn't have the capacity to do that on our own, but we were able to access a grant that provided that capacity, and it's been very helpful for the industry as a whole. We make these things available at certain levels to members and non-members. But creating the value proposition out of this grant is that certain elements of our website are available to members and certain are not available to members. Within our website, they are members. If they are not members, that function is turned off. So we look to create value propositions for memberships at this point in time based upon everything that we're doing, including the grants that we're accessing. Creating the value proposition from businesses, as I talked about earlier, is based upon our sponsorship process. And our impression is that almost all of the approaches that we have, as I said before, are coming from marketing dollars, and so we do treat it like a marketing system, but we do ask for a very significant amount of money. And this is based upon some basic parameters that we've done, that we set forth based upon research that we've done, and they exist as a person, but they fit a particular demographical construct. Those names sell for about $1 each. You can get mailing lists and so on that sell for pennies a piece, but those are names that don't have any sort of validity or verification behind them. So based upon that, when someone wants to come to our market, we use our market counts, our customer counts at market, to determine sort of the basic value of that relationship. What we found, unfortunately, is that many market managers across the country are not perceiving the value as we are perceiving it. And I'll give you a quick story to elucidate that point. We had made that, but it's not a local product. It's not locally produced. You're not a vendor. The only way you get in is through the sponsorship deal, and the sponsorship deal indicates that we're going to want $10,000 from you to be at this market on 3 different dates. And they said, well, that sounds interesting, but we were just at another market, a non-member market in this state, that let us in for free. They thought it was a nice event. And moreover, we were out in California, and I won't mention the name of the market out there, but it was, and this is now, if you want to come into our markets, this is what you need to pay. And eventually, through many hours of negotiation, they agreed to pay somewhere in the vicinity of $6,000, which I was about to accept when the car industry collapsed and they just said we're not coming. So my point here is that I think as an industry, we need to start paying attention to the actual value that we're offering, as in market managers in particular, I hope will begin to understand the potential revenue stream from all the public attention and demand for trying to touch farmers markets that is happening out there. Was the benefits of managing markets and the benefits and the challenges of managing markets. And I've touched on a lot of these points, but I do want to talk about some of the benefits, because I think I've probably focused a little bit more on the challenges with you folks now. One of the benefits you can see is that it maintains diverse connections, and as a result of the diversity, we're often aware of the most critical elements and issues that are happening in the farmers markets immediately versus having to wait to get reports from the field, so to speak. The ground truthing allows our experience to be used to sway public policy and practice. And we do take what we hear, see, and know from managing our farmers markets and go to the State House with that experience and either comment on public policy, express opinions, or educate at hearings at the State House, or in a limited number of instances. The market management system has also given us very strong connection to the shoppers, and these folks have been our instrumental donors. The folks that we reach out to for our annual appeal, for all of our appeals, for our events, the dinners, and so on and so forth, come from the mailing lists that are gathered at the markets that we manage. It's not to say we limit ourselves to those, but a good percentage of the mailing list is generated at that level. We also have direct connections with the local governments of the communities that we manage markets in, and this allows us to work with them, particularly at Board of Health type of regulatory issues, to create a plausible scenario for managing and operating farmers markets. And again, this direct connection gives us some stature with other local governments, and we can go to them or they can come to us as sort of the air of authority, which they do, and we are also able to speak their language a little bit better than if we didn't manage markets. So all in all, it makes for a much better capacity to connect with local government and help a farmer's market, no matter where it be, through some of their issues. One of the things that markets does for us is also allows for a faster change of focus and modification to our income streams. So that is being out in the field and getting all the new information that's coming out there and cutting edge, if you will, type of interaction with consumers just gives us more nimble response. However, all of these benefits do not come without challenges, and some of the challenges that we have is that diversity is very hard to manage, and it's very expensive to manage. We need to have more staff doing more things to manage all the diverse interactions and operations that we're having. Managing market, we need to continually reach out to members, both market and farmer members, to make sure always having to deal with competing interests in the market management situation. Someone recently has coined a phrase that farmers market is about co-opetition, and I think that's true. But when push comes to shove, the competition side of the cooperation frequently is the leading factor, and we have to work through those stressful situations. And how do we do that? Well, we need to be fair and truthful around our capacity in this regard. We need to try to avoid the stress by changing people's perspective on what a proper solution might be. And another challenge for us is the broad focus doesn't necessarily generate the most efficient operations. And what we mean by that, or what I mean by that, is that When you have 20 things to do in a day, the ability to say to a particular staff person, you are best at X, Y, and Z, so therefore you need to focus on that, and other people will focus on other things, doesn't necessarily always avail itself, because that person may be pulled off by a crisis phone call into areas that is not their level of expertise, but they're the only person around to respond, and so on. So it's not necessarily the most effective way to deal with running an organization profitably or efficiently. However, with all that being said, and although it does keep us on our toes, because we feel obligated to at one level, and we continue to do it because we feel rewarded as an organization to continue to do that. With that being said, we are working to move away from market management as we increase our capacity to generate funds in other ways and to serve all the members of the state rather than the more limited members of the managed market pool. We are looking for ways to engage the community and find community organizations. So the $100,000 question for us in that regard is, can we focus and keep and create sustainable value as we work through this transition? So with that said, is there any questions?
Maybe I'll start. This is Stacy. Jeff, I have a question about your website upgrade, which I think is fabulous. And that is, are there non-member markets that are listed in your directory? And if so, was that something you decided to do because it was a grant which funded the project and that you wanted to make sure you were being inclusive?
We have always, yes, the answer is yes, but we have always been inclusive. We see ourselves as one of the principal engagement with the general public on farmers markets, and so we did not want to be so exclusive as to only provide them access to information on markets that were members of ours. So there is information. This is where a picture would be worth 1,000 words. So, Stacy, how can I bring it up for everyone to see?
If you go to share underneath the PowerPoint, go to the little pull-down arrow and just share my desktop.
All right, okay, hold on.
Meanwhile, I'm going to open up a little poll for folks. This is the last one. Oops.
Can you tell me when you see it, Stacy?
Not yet. Did you go to my computer screen?
Yeah, I did.
Your website did pop up in an Internet Explorer window.
It's telling me I need to load an add-on, Stacy.
Oh, yeah. So,
can one of you guys bring it up? www.massfarmersmarkets.org.
Yeah, we can do it here, but you'll have to. I'll share my screen, but what you're going to have to do is essentially direct me by voice where I should go.
Thanks for your patience, everybody. See, there is a question from Christy.
Go ahead.
See it on the bottom of the screen. She's asking, what percentage of your members participate to access insurance?
Okay, I see that, yes. Well, we have about 70% of membership that participates in the insurance. It's not required to be a member to have insurance, and again, this is based upon our I think it's fair to say it's based upon our initial start as being coming out of state organizations where taxpayers funding paid the vote to provide these type of services. So our insurance system. All right, Jeff. So if you would go to markets, just hit the tab markets.
Market manager?
No, down below the first blue bar.
Ah, yes, sorry.
You click on markets.
Okay.
Not seeing a change in my screen.
There's a short delay, yeah.
Meanwhile, if there are any questions, feel free to verbalize since we can't see that chat window.
And again, that's *# to unmute yourself.
This is Glenda. I had questions maybe for Pasta, though. Is that appropriate now?
It's okay with me. I'm still not getting anything on my screen here, guys.
Go ahead.
What I wondered is if you keep track of how much it does cost you with retaining members or acquiring new members, since you said the conference membership is such a great deal that it's too good to pass by. But I just wonder if you have like a budget for when our members paying for themselves, the cost of acquiring new members, the cost of retaining members.
Oh, okay. That might be a couple of slightly different questions, but we do in our full financial report, which is well over 20 pages long. We do have a page for every department where we look at the related income and expenses for that department, and we have a membership department. Did we include that as a downloadable?
Yeah, there should be another file share. There is a PDF document. There's a few more financial document pages that we didn't specifically talk about.
Well, and I'm really not as interested in knowing the details of PASA, except as a management tool. Then are you looking at you're looking at in their donation each year, and just curious to know whether as a way to manage memberships and know what's working, you're using some of those types of tools.
We try to keep track of as much data as possible, but of course at some point your return on the data itself is pretty low. That you have people working harder on generating reports than in getting members or even fulfilling the mission. But we do have, for instance, on our membership page, which is available for download for those that are interested. But we do, for instance, keep all of our newsletter costs and website costs on that page, as well as the staff involved with membership and direct costs of managing the membership office. In fact, that's one of the tools that we use, that particular page, to decide when we should increase our fees. We only increase our fees when we see that the actual cost of retaining members is beginning to exceed the revenue from memberships from members when they join. Because everything else is paid for in other ways, and they have their own revenue sources associated with them.
That's helpful.
Not everybody's going to be able to have that level of detail in their financial report, but to sort of remake a point I made earlier, if the report is not...
Lose Brian there?
It sounds like we have.
Michele, are you there? Uh-oh. I know they had some technical issues right before the webinar. They lost their DSL connection, and the alternate phone may have pooped out as well. But I really apologize that. Hopefully they'll be able to jump back in. Are other folks able to see Mass Farmers Market website?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll finish up with the question, which is you can see the member and non-member designation. You can see the Find a Market section. Those search functions will work for any market, but if you look all the way over to the right-hand side of the page where you see a member, you'll see products, vendors, and Remind Me. And where they're not members, you don't see that. Those are real-time lists of products if the vendors and the managers choose to keep their product list updated on a regular basis, which we ask them to do. There's a list of all the vendors with links to the vendors' websites and so on for each market. And the Remind Me is a service that we instituted, again with the grant money, to let people choose to be reminded about that particular market either by a text message, by voicemail message, or by an email. And we do keep it simple, but basically it's like you wanted to be reminded that the Acton market is open today at 11 a.m. We do that to respond to some of the demands for the consumers who we hear while we're at market as in a management capacity saying, geez, I've been trying to get down here for the last 3 weeks, but I keep on forgetting. And so we're trying to make it easy for them not to forget. To do it, they need to log in, and of course by logging in we capture some of their information, and that expands our, I don't think we need to run people through our system. You will see, I will note, as I said earlier, you'll see we have 2 sponsors currently for our organization, and they're listed on that right-hand side of our website.
Just out of curiosity, is it actually the band, or is it like a concert promoter?
Well, the band said to a public relations team, we want to work with farmers markets and get connected with farmers markets and promote our event through that venue. And they came to us, and I said, yeah, you can do it, but it's going to be through the sponsorship arrangement. And the band/promoter agreed, and that's how the relationship was committed. And I guess I use the word committed because many people tell me I should be committed in this regard. So I think we should, in terms of opening up for general questions, one of the things that we thought might be helpful for understanding is how you see yourself designated, particularly with the IRS, and we have a poll here to bring up. And I wonder if you might respond to that. And while we're doing that, I did leave off one part of the answer for your question, Christy, is do we generate significant income for our organization through insurance? We generate a net of about $25,000 to $30,000 per year from insurance. We consider that moderate, not really significant income, but it is unrestricted funds. We see grants as restricted. We're obligated to do exactly what we say in the grant, sometimes more than we thought. Most often more than we thought, I would say. The farmers market coupon program, that's a contractual basis that is very restricted in terms of what we can and cannot do. We have very specific line items that we are accountable for in those types of contracts. Our market management fees, we regard them as restricted income in that we essentially believe we are contracting with not only the farmers that go to a market, but the community and the residents of that community to run a farmers market. And so those fees are really dedicated towards the processes of running a farmers market, and we wouldn't just take.
Great. Well, I'm sorry that it looks like we lost Michele and Brian, but are there any other questions?
Actually.
Oh, are you back?
We're back.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. What happened?
No, it just seemed to kick us off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we just re-logged on.
You jump back on. There was a question that you were in the midst of answering. Did you want to wrap that up or finish that?
I think I was saying that if your financial report is not serving your needs, then it's a lot of effort that you're going to for very little gain. And so in answer to that first question about whether we look at the expenses, even if you're afraid of what it's going to say, so you can make intelligent choices.
All right then. Well, I want to thank everybody for participating today and for your time in being part of this discussion, and I hope that you can encourage your colleagues in other state and regional associations and organizations to check out the archive, and that you'll have a few minutes here to download any of these documents in either FileShare 2 or FileShare 3. And thanks again to everybody. Thank you for Brian and Michele and to Jeff. And sorry about the little technical glitches there, but thanks for all your patience, and I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon, and happy Farmers Market Week, which is just around the corner. I also want to ask you to complete a survey. You'll get a link right at the end, and there'll just be 5 questions to help us plan for future webinars. So when you get a little pop-up in your browser after this session, please take just a couple minutes to answer those questions. Thanks so much, everybody.